So, the day has finally come. Here we are. Today we're celebrating our school having officially opened 50 years ago. It actually happened on the 1st of November 1971, and Mrs. Patel's got lots more to say about that, so I shan't steal your thunder, Mrs. Patel. But we are formally today here with all our wonderful guests. We're going to open the proceedings and we'll be celebrating 50 years of Mellers. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all of our classes that are here. We've got choir here, we've got year 5 and 6 here, and welcome to everybody that's joining us on screen, all the children back in their classes. I'd also like to welcome a few other people. We've got Jasbinder. Is Jasbinder in here yet? There she is. Jasbinder, it's really great to see you, and I'm not going to steal your thunder other than to say you are a former pupil of Mellers and now a very famous children's author. Check that out. Isn't that right? It's really wonderful, and Jasbinder is also our reading patron, so we really love the support that we get from Jasbinder. We've got some absolutely very important people from the local authority that are here. We've got Mr. Lee, we've got Mr. Dexter, and we've got some Miss Trasker over there. We've got a former deputy head of Mellers Primary School, isn't that right, Mr. Dunbar? And we've got Scrivens here as well, so it's here as well. It's lovely to see you. And Pat Whitby, my goodness, it's great to see you. Miss Carol McCrone, you're one of our governors anyway, aren't you? So we see you regularly. You know lots about Mellers. It's also really good to see Mr. Fielding here, who's from the Nottingham Schools Trust, or the brilliant organisation that we're part of, and of course our very good friend Lillian Greenwood. Lillian, thank you so much for taking the time to come and join us today. It means a huge amount. Lots of you will know that I've been working very closely with Lillian personally over the summer, because we had lots of work to do, didn't we? Trying to get people that were stuck in Afghanistan, trying to get them out into safety. And we're still doing that work together, Lillian and her brilliant team. So that was a great piece of work. Good piece of community work, I think. So today we're going to be celebrating our 50th birthday, but we also have the pleasure of welcoming the Focus Provision for Deaf Pupils. The Nottingham City Focus Provision for Deaf Pupils joined us in September. It's absolutely wonderful. We love having our new friends with us, and I think they love being here with us as well. And we're also we're really looking forward to opening their new permanent base in the summer. So they're going to have a proper building, their own classrooms, and we'll have a big party to celebrate that, I think. Don't you think, Miss Burrows? I think so. And Mrs. Patel's got lots of other activities planned, reunions planned in the spring and community events in the summer, all celebrating Mellers' 50th birthday. So, back to our community and our area. We love Radford. Radford is a wonderful place to live, and it's a wonderful place to go to school. Radford has a very strong history of commitment to education and care for children in the community. And in the 1890s, a whole lot of time ago, the Nottingham Union building was built in Hartley Road, and it had responsibility for the care of orphaned and other children that didn't have parents or a guardian. In 1929, this duty was transferred to the City Council, and then the Children's Act in 1948, the building was used as offices for the Children's Department, and then in 1960, it was demolished. And as historians do, and that's a bit of a theme today, we've been researching, and Mrs. Patel's done a lot of this research, the history of our school using books and reports. And we discovered from a report by Robert Mellers, not related to the school, it's a book called Old Nottingham Suburbs, Now and Then, Radford and Hyson Green, in brackets. And it says that by 1914, there were church trust schools at Old and New Radford and Hyson Green, 2 Roman Catholic schools, having together provision for nearly 2,000 children, and the council schools at Berridge Road, Forster Street, Ilkeston Road, the Boulevard, Scotto, Malton Road, Forest Hills and Wollerton Road provided for 8,000 children. And Mr. Mellers described the purpose of education as being about becoming more and more adapted to the future lives and surroundings of children, the development of their powers of observation, love of nature, handiness, readiness, and the improvement of their morals and behaviour. This is my favourite. The advantages of children entirely abstaining from intoxicating liquors and tobacco. Well, that's one for the grown-ups. Cleanliness of their teeth and habits and homes. Learning to swim, that's a biggie for us. and other subjects which will be for their future advantage. And actually, this already sounds like the Mellers way. That's what we call at Mellers, the Mellers way. And we have a bit of a joke because the Mellers way sounds like a cult because we have a particular way of doing things at Mellers, but we know that it works. But we would also say that back in the 1890s and the 1900s, the Mellers way was already underway. And as they would say in France, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. So what we're going to be introduced now to is one of our former pupils, who's Haddie. She's been running a dance club for us. She's been running this dance club for the last year and a half. She came in during lockdown to do it, and one of her former pupils is going to talk to us about that.
Hello, my name is Afnan, and this is what I love about dance club. You get to dance, you get to freestyle, you get to get a routine, and we have the best energetic teacher ever. You should come.
Now, I've got a little bit of a story about Afnan. When Afnan was in F2 at the Christmas party, I went down to have a look at the dancing, and my goodness, she had moves way back. Can you remember that, Mrs. Patel?
Absolutely.
Afnan could dance, and I'm so pleased that she's in dance club. So I'm now going to hand over to Mrs. Patel.
So as Miss Dawson said, we are incredibly lucky that we've got the logbooks from day one, and they actually finish in July 2000. So I've learned a fantastic
Recording
amount.
in progress.
Thank you. About the day-to-day running of the school, those incidental events that perhaps don't get logged anywhere else. The very first entrance thanks the staff for giving up lots of their own time to set the school up before it opened on the 1st of November 1971. The staff consisted of the head teacher, Mr. Harry Stanton, a deputy head and one other teacher, 3 assistants, a secretary and a site manager, with 124 children. Now, Mr. Harry Stanton was then part of an inspection on the 2nd day of the school opening, and then the 4th day of the school opening, and then the 9th day of the school opening, just a subject inspection for music. The official opening took place on the 24th of April 1972 by the Lord Mayor, and we are lucky that we've got the certificate of thanks from the Lord Mayor to evidence that. Now, Mr. Stanton campaigned hard. He knew what he wanted for Mellers and its community. And at that opening ceremony, he started a campaign for a nursery. That was a gap in the provision. He noted in June 1973 that a nursery was planned for Radford, but it was to be built on the last plot of grass that children in the flats had to play on. In July 1973, the Parents' Association group, led by Mrs. Marion Fowler, held a sit-in protest, and they sat on the land to block the foundations being laid. And by 9:30 a.m. that morning, the nursery was moved to Mellers. The nursery opened on the 21st of January 1974. Mr. Stanton was also instrumental in the formation of John Carroll Leisure Centre, attending his first meeting for this in April 1981, and the centre opened in 1984. The Mellers community as a whole were disappointed at its closure earlier this year. Now, Harry Stanton passed away on the 16th of July 1985 from a brain tumour while still in post at Mellers. The school closed for his funeral as a mark of respect, and the community raised funds for a scanner in his memory. In May 1986, a commemorative bench was placed on site facing John Carroll that he was so passionate about. Now, unfortunately, the bench is no longer there, but we have the plaque that was on that bench to remind us of his impact at school.
And that's on my wall, actually, isn't it, Mrs. Patel? I keep
Well, it was, but I've taken it.
not now.
I will put it back. So in April 1986, Mrs. Elise Tiplady accepted the head teacher post at Mellers and continued the development of the school as the heart of the community. She successfully bid for £8,000 of funding for an early start project, which was wraparound care, breakfast and after school club to us. And that wasn't around at the time. A portable building in March 1993 was placed just up the road to accommodate that. Mrs Tiplady left Mellers to become head teacher at Claremont Primary in August 2002. Now, Mellers welcomed Mr David Mellon as head teacher in January 2003, and he was here until December 2006. He brought his passion for enrichment, reading and the arts to Mellers. In April 2007, our current head teacher, Miss Amanda Dawson, joined Mellers. Her drive for everyone at the Mellers community to reach their full potential is infectious, and no glass ceilings is a very common phrase around school. Now, each head teacher is very different personalities, very different leadership styles, and I've had the privilege to work with 3 of them to know this. But there are some key similarities. Each head teacher had or has a determination for every child, every young person to do their best, to thrive, to be safe and successful, to make Mellers the heart of community and to make Mellers a family. Now, I'd like the pleasure now to introduce to you again Jasmine Billen, a former pupil, now successful author, and she's going to read to you a poem she's composed specially for this event. Thank you.
Hi, just before I read the poem, I just want to say what a huge honour it is to be here. And I was actually one of the very first pupils to be at Mellers, and it was really, really incredible. And I hope that through reading the poem, this will come through to you. It's called Mellers at 50. Years ago, 50, if you want to know, I was you, a little girl sitting in row 3, behind Karen, Philip, Jacqueline, and next to Suzanne, my best friend with the red hair that curled and bobbed. But before that, when Mellers was so new that the scent of varnish sparkled the air, we walked from our old school in a crocodile line. 1,000 steps we took back there at the old school. We had windows so tall, the tiny me could only see the tops of clouds. There was not a single shoot or stem of green, but here in our new school, we had fields and trees, wide windows with views of sun sparkling across the grass, and we had fun. Mr. Stanton brought his guitar. Sing, said Mr. Ferrigan, and we painted, we did drama, we read, and I wrote poetry. Mrs. Wallace said, let's send these poems to a competition. And she did. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the poem. Will we be able to have a copy of the poem and perhaps display it? Thank you so much. Wonderful. Mellers has always been and always will be about offering possibilities to our children and our community to ensure that you, all of you, are equipped with everything that you need to be successful in whatever it is that you choose to do with your life. Mrs. Patel, in her research, found out that on the 4th of May 1972, the first ever school visit was to Twycross Zoo, where a child had to be rescued from the otter pond. And the interesting thing is that actually a whole school visit, including parents, to Twycross Zoo, was my first whole school visit when I arrived in 2007. On the 29th of April 1982, Harry Stanton put a report into the Evening Post about a camp, suggesting that donations would not be unwelcome. And this, along with letters, raised £245 So the cost to families was £10 each for a camp to Whitby. And that leads to all of our present-day residentials. All of our children will go on probably 2 or 3 residential visits in their time at Mellers, starting in year 2 actually. And our year 6 children always go to Boggle Hole just outside Whitby, and it's on the beach and it's the best time. So everybody really looks forward to that. We also have a mix of local visits and links with schools in Pakistan, in China and Jamaica. And some of our children have even been to China to visit our sister school. We were hoping to do a visit in March next year, but COVID sort of stopped that really. We're hoping that that will take place in 2023. We're hoping to take 25 children to China. All right, Mr. Lee? We have been liaising with Andrew Smith. During our work with Bethel School in Jamaica, that's where our school song was co-created. So it's a shared school song. It's the Jamaican school, Bethel School song, and it's our school song. And you're in for an absolute treat. Get your hankies ready. It's our fabulous Mellers choir singing Strive.
Well, I think you can tell that music is a very important part of Mellers, right from our very first inspection to our first music festival in March 1975. And I have to just say a big thank you there to Miss Catherine and to Miss Ginnard for your fantastic work and to our fabulous signer whose name has slipped me in my nerves standing at the front, Miss Potter. No point trying to disguise that one. So, in February 1997, Mr. Mark Burnett visited Mellers to teach the trumpet. Little did he know he was a foreshadowing of what was to come when we joined the In Harmony project. From January 2013, every child from Year 4 has been learning to play a brass instrument. The In Harmony project philosophy is to inspire and to transform the lives of children and families through the power of music making. We've participated in music camps, area band, performed at the Albert Hall and at the London South Bank. We've been given the opportunity to take music medals and graded exams. Now I'm delighted to hand over now to a former pupil, Rajay Wright, who's just going to say a couple of things. And then that will lead to a performance alongside his brother, who is a current pupil at Mellers, Brooklyn.
Hello. So, as you know, I'm a former pupil at Mellers, and throughout my journey, I can say I've really enjoyed my time at Mellers, and I've really loved the opportunities that opened up for me, such as the music school. When I was in Year 4, I got shown the trumpet and the trombone, and they said, all right, choose one, what you're liking. So I chose the trumpet, and I was like, no, it's not for me. And then, as soon as I saw the trombone, I was like, yeah, this is my instrument. I fell in love with it from the get-go. And from then, music has been able to take me to area bands, it's been able to take me to places like the Albert Hall, the Royal Concert Hall. It's even been able to take me to Germany, where I was able to play with the Twin Orchestra in Karlsruhe, where I was able to play in so many fancy areas. I was able to play in the Black Forest. I played so many classical pieces from all sorts of areas, classical, baroque, hip-hop, rock, all of it. And so, here with my little brother, I have a piece that I'm going to play called the Dvorak Fifth Symphony.
That nearly had me going. That was absolutely wonderful. Rajay, thank you so much for coming back. How wonderful. But actually, the wonder doesn't stop there, because it's a bit of a family affair this afternoon, because we've got Rajay and Brooklyn's mum, Shernette, who really wanted to say something about her experience of our school. So over to Shernette.
Hi, my name is Shernette Robinson. And I'm a parents of the pupils for Brooklyn and Tiara, who are currently going to Mellers at the moment, and Roger as the past pupils. And I've been in Mellers School over 15 years, I think. I should say more than 15 years, yeah. It's a lovely place. It's a lovely school to be. And I would recommend every and anyone to go to school because it's a lovely school to be. Because you get the teachers, they're very lovely and they're very nice too, and they help out a lot. And even the receptionists and the principal, even the cooks, they are very nice people. Very nice people to be with and around. And they make sure that all the kids them come to school, they make sure they come out with proper education, what they deserve or what they needed to carry on to a secondary or university. They're a very good school. And I would recommend anyone. Like music, for instance, yes. As a family, Brooklyn and Roger, they're in the intermediate orchestra, and sorry, and the Araban as well. They go like on Thursdays they do music at school and stuff is like that. So they're good people. And Tiara, she as well, she just recently joined it as well, and hopefully when Zora get there, though, she's gonna join as well too. The family thing carrying on. Oh, for me and my family, they've done a very good job for me. They've done so much. I can't even complain. They've done so much for me, and I thank God I have them in my life as a part of Mellers family and friends school. They're very good people. Happy birthday, Mellers School!
Wonderful is that? You're so lucky, Roger, Brooklyn and West here. They're so lucky to have a mum like that. Fabulous. But she's absolutely right. Mellers is a learning community. It's all about learning, and not just about learning maths and English, but about learning how to be good citizens and learning how to engage with a whole range of different subjects. And one of the things that we really firmly believe is, if the children can do it, so can the staff. So when we first, as Mrs. Patel was talking about, we first embraced In Harmony. I think Mr. Burton's here. Is lurking at the back. Come down to the front a little bit, Mr. Burton, please. Come and sit near at the front. So Mr. Burton approached us in 2013, asked us if we'd like to be involved in Harmony. So we can see you a little bit further down, perhaps behind. There we go, there we go. Here he is. Oh, there we go. Don't sit on the front.
Hi, everybody. Can I go back?
So no, you can sit at the front here. That's right. So Mr. Burton persuaded. Well, we needed no persuasion. He asked us if we'd like to be part of a trial. And actually, I would say the rest is history, because we love our music provision, and we feel really strongly that every school in the city, every school in the country, should be embracing music in the way that the Mr. Burton and the City Council are. So when the children were learning to play back in 2013, we thought, well, the staff should learn alongside, and the whole In Harmony model is that staff learn alongside the children. So we decided that we were going to set up a staff band. Before then, not a single one of us had ever played a brass instrument before, not a trumpet or a trombone or anything, and those first noises that we made were absolutely atrocious. But I'll tell you what, we've persisted. And since then, three of those staff band have made it to ABRSM grade 3, haven't we, Mr. Burton? Yes, that's right. But one of the things we would say, and Nathan will certainly back us up on this one, teachers make the worst students. We're rowdy, we have staff band every week, we get nervous, we forget our scales, we don't like scales, Mrs. Patel, do we? We miss the high notes, but we persevere, we do our best, and we support each other, and Nathan and Luke will testify to that. When Mellers Primary School comes together, there's a kind of magic that happens. Something special emerges. And what we're going to show you now is the staff band and Key Stage 2 band doing a version of Unwritten. So here we go. so proud of the Mellers way, and the two basic tenets of everything that we do are happy and safe. And on the 28th of January 1974, there was a group of secondary head teachers that visited, and they were totally blown away by the peace and the quiet and the happy atmosphere at Mellers. On the 7th of July 1975, a Miss Sally Regitz, a teacher from Florida, visited to study what was in those days the Mellers way. And it was summed up in a newspaper article in 1981. Mellers is a haven for security and stability. The children want to be there. Visiting school is like walking into a happy family home. They teach children how to learn, and they treat children as individuals. And we strive for excellence, which means spotting talent early and making sure that we get all of those pupils on the right path. Roger is a great example of that. We knew he was a musician, he had real talent, so we worked to make sure that he was getting involved in bands. One of our former pupils is now a member of the Lithuanian water polo team. And Ruben, you were talking earlier about swimming, weren't we? Really commit to swimming. Well, he's now a member of the Lithuanian. That's Paulus, everybody. That was a piece of information I got through from Miss Gledhill. And Mark Baffer-Botchway, one of our former pupils, is now involved in the Central Television Workshop. We want every child to succeed and be the best that they can. We live and breathe being at our best and making sure that everything we do is of the highest quality, ensuring that pupils and families are equipped with everything they need to be successful in life. And I'm now going to introduce you to another former pupil, Develle Reid. Develle's mum, I think she's watching and she won't come in, and I really wanted her to come in. She's still one of our midday supervisors and has just started work as a teaching assistant with us at Mellers. I'm going to let the words speak for themselves. He can't be with us today because he's really busy at university. But here's the photograph of Develle, a former Mellers pupil and now reading medicine at Cambridge. So this is Develle's message. Get your tissues ready. I'm writing this message during my 5th week of the term at Cambridge, which is known to be the most difficult week. It's when you miss home the most. It's when you have the most amount of work to do, and it's probably the time when you most feel like giving up. But resilience is something that was strengthened in me every day at Mellers. Every teacher showing me how to recover after a setback or helping to disprove the idea that where I come from would determine the rest of my life. They're the lessons that I hold on to every day. Mellers is a really special place for me. It makes up such a big part of what I consider to be home. It's the school in which I've spent the most time, and it makes me so proud to have seen it expand and grow since I've left. The most important point is that Mellers starts journeys. I didn't tell him to write any of this, by the way. This is Develle from the heart. Wonderful young man. 16 years ago, Mellers started my journey that has taken me, a black boy from Radford, to now engage with some of the most high-profile researchers on the planet, and I never want Mellers to stop doing that. Never stop giving children the motivation and inspiration and strength to try something new or set their goals high or have the confidence to know what they want. All of my experiences with my teachers and my peers during my time at Mellers has shaped me for the rest of my life. To all the children at Mellers, I'd like to say, well done. And I'd like to tell you to keep working hard. Having the feeling and the confidence that you can do anything you want to do is one of the best experiences in the world, and your time at Mellers will gift you with that. To all my teachers and the staff, I'd like to say a big thank you. I'll never be able to fully explain to you how my life has changed, but it would all have been impossible without you and your patience and your confidence in me. Keep on doing what you do best. Give the world more musicians and teachers and doctors from Mellers, because I promise you they will be the best. And I've got to say that when Develle's mum, Jackie, came to see me, she just came really quietly in the office to tell me that he'd been offered a place to read medicine at Cambridge, I cried. And I also heard a crack appear in that glass ceiling. And that's what this is all about. So I'd like to introduce you to another former pupil, Ruben, who actually is doing all of the filming today. But Ruben, I guess you'll tell everybody about the photography bit, won't you? So I'm going to leave that with you. Thank you, Ruben.
Well, that's a bit of a hard act to follow, but my name is Ruben. I went to Mellers and I left in 2015, which seems like another world ago now. But anyway, I really enjoyed coming to Mellers, and particularly the opportunities come to mind when I think back to my time here. They've already been mentioned because it's really key at what Mellers do, but I wanted to kind of expand on my personal experience of that. The first experience that came to mind for me was swimming, and we had weekly swimming lessons. We went up and walked up to John Carroll, and at the start I really didn't like swimming. I didn't like the idea that I couldn't touch the floor, I couldn't see anything, my eyes were watered up and stuff like that, and I just didn't like it. But anyway, I persevered, or rather the school, I didn't really have an option, the school made me persevere. Yeah. But no, looking back, I'm really glad. I'm a confident swimmer now. I figured out that goggles were the solution to not seeing, and I thought that was a really good memory that I think back to Mellers. And as well, it's been talked about a little bit, but the In Harmony project and being able to pick up an instrument is amazing looking back. It was a bit similar to swimming at the start. I wasn't too sure of it. I think I've kind of learned that I'm a bit naive at the beginning. But I picked up a trumpet, and at the start, I'll be very honest, I was not a fan. I was a bit annoyed that it was compulsory. But again, the school made me persevere, and I'm so glad for it now. I still play to this day. I'm in the Robin Hood Youth Orchestra, which Rajay's in as well, and Ian here is the conductor for. And it's been such an incredible opportunity. Music is a massive part of my life, and I'm very grateful that Mellers is able to kind of do that for so many more students as well. And finally, the kind of school photographer portion of it, and really Mellers got me into photography and kind of videography, that kind of thing. It was actually a thought that came to mind with me and a good friend of mine, that the school could maybe do with like a school photographer. We were probably in year 4 or something like that, and we decided to go down to Miss Dawson, and we had a little bit of a talk with her about why we think it would be a good idea. And Miss Dawson loved it. She really embraced it, and invested in some really high-tech equipment. She got us like a pretty professional camera, and granted in year 4 or so we didn't take the best pictures, but they were still pretty decent. And the Mellers has really nurtured my interest in photography as well. Mrs. O'Bardi got me into the Nottingham Bloom competition, which is like a bit of a wildlife competition. So I took a few photos, and I won that for a few years running, and they always came to the awards ceremony and were really behind me in that. So I would say with that as well, looking back on it now, and when I was taking my notes for what I was going to say, I think that Mellers produces really well-rounded individuals. I think that it's a lot more than the academic side for Mellers. For example, swimming, it's not really got anything to do with the English or maths that I was doing, but being able to swim is just really such a key skill. So I would like to say just congratulations to Mellers for celebrating 50 years, and just a big congratulations to all of the team as well. I think that the team's really gone from strength to strength, and they really care about students individually and as people. So I'm so glad to be back here. I've never really lost the sense that this is a bit of a home for me. So yeah, massive congratulations.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? All of the staff here that know Ruben and it's so great to see them when they come back. Come back and share with us how well you're doing. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we're going to move on now to our wonderful Chair of Governors, Mrs. Leslie Lyon, who's an absolute tour de force, I think I'd say. She's done so much work within the city prior to becoming our Chair of Governors. I think I nabbed you pretty quickly there, didn't I? Once I knew you'd retired, I asked her to come and be our Chair, and she's wonderful. So Mrs. Leslie Lyon's going to come and speak to you now about Mellers.
Well, hello everybody. It's lovely to come and talk to you again. I come and talk to you on quite a regular basis, so it's great to be here again, and welcome to all our guests this afternoon. What do the governors do? I've talked to you a bit about this before, and one of the main jobs of governors at a school is to set a vision for the school. What's the school about? Where's the school going to go? And it was really interesting to hear the piece that Miss Dawson read by Devell, our student who is now at Cambridge. And one of the things that he said is Mellers starts journeys. What a wonderful thing to say. And when I first started to think about today, because this has been planned for an awful long time now, we've put a lot of thought into it, I thought, well, what can I compare Mellers to? And I can compare it to a journey. And that was what I saw, the ship and the journey. And I was hoping that there was going to be a slide here, but obviously something's gone wrong with the technology. But I had a slide of a ship. And it said, it started off with the words that Mellers is a unique and extraordinary school. And those are the first words of our vision for Mellers, the governor's vision. That's the first part of it. It goes on to say, you can read this on the website, it goes on to talk about a vision for exceptional progress for all children, irrespective of starting point, through inspirational teaching and leadership. It says children will be enabled to be resilient learners in a culture where there is no stereotyping of expectations and in a safe and nurturing environment. So that's our vision for Mellers School. But I'm going to focus on the words extraordinary and unique. What do extraordinary and unique mean? Unique. I looked this up this morning in the Oxford Dictionary. Unequalled, remarkable, special. Extraordinary, outside, going beyond what one would normally expect. And our ship is on a course, and the people who are the most important people on any ship, the kids. Because the crew, the people who are in the ship, get it to that vision. The governors may guide it and steer it along the way, but the people, the crew. And who is the crew? Crew are all you people here. Your teachers, you, everybody who works in this ship are the people who get it there, who make it extraordinary and unique, which is what we believe it is. So you are the people, but that hasn't happened overnight. That hasn't happened overnight. As all people who are sitting here have said and have contributed, they have been on that journey for 50 years now, since 1971. And those blocks have built up by the very first teacher and the second head teacher, all the pupils, all the people, Roger, Ruben, Jasvinder, all the people that have been a part of it have built this extraordinary, unique and very, very special place. And I thought, well, why is it extraordinary and unique? What makes it that? And I came up with 4 things, and I could probably have come up with 24, but I came up with 4 things. And it's a word that's been used, the first one is a word that's been used a lot today, and the first one is that the crew members at Mellers are resilient. And Devell mentioned resilience, didn't he? He mentioned resilience. And you are resilient. You pick yourselves up. You face difficulties like our ship on its course. You pick yourselves up and you go for it yet again. You don't allow those knockbacks to stop you. You are creative. We've seen the creativity today. We've talked about the music. We've seen the creativity. We've only got to look around this beautiful hall to see the creativity. It's oozing out of Mellers School. It's oozing out of you and the staff. You are compassionate. The compassion in Mellers is helpful. It oozes out of the very fibre of the building. You care for each other. You look after each other. You welcome new people. You set a standard of compassion, and not just from within the school, out there into the community as well, which is so much a part of Mellers. And you are risk takers. Fantastic risk takers. Yes, let's do it. Let's go for it. Let's take that challenge. And this is the culture that has built up at Mellers over the last 50 years. So, you are people who are part of a journey, and the journey will go on. In another 50 years, there will be another celebration. But remember, as everybody here has said today, that the world is yours. You have that foundation, as Ruben and Jay and Jacinda have said. You are here, you have absorbed all the wonderful stuff that Mellers has to offer, and you will take it out onto life's journey. And I wish you good luck in that. But remember, you are part of the Mellers journey, and you will continue to be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mrs. We're so lucky to have you with us, aren't we? We love Mrs. Lyon. But she's absolutely right. Family and community are so important to us at Mellers. Families stay. And we've got, I think we're now teaching grandchildren of children that some of us had taught a long time ago. Isn't that right, Mrs. Buttress? I'm only looking at you there, not only because you're in my line of vision. So. And staff stay, that's the other thing. And our work doesn't stop at the school gate. Lily and I were working together really closely over the summer when one of our families was stuck in Kabul. So we worked together to get them out, didn't we? I didn't know what I was doing, I had no idea, but we knew this is our family, this is our community. If we do nothing else, we get them home. And we're still working to get other Afghan people to safety. That's what we do. We get parents back into education through our parents' courses. We are a true community school. And I talked a little while ago about long-standing staff members. Miss Pitt joined us in October 1990. She's never worked anywhere else. Mrs. Regan, January 1990. And where's Mrs. Galbraith? I think she's watching in the classroom. January 1992. It is like a bit of a cult, and I think anybody who's old enough will know the series The Stepford Wives. Once you're in, you don't get out. Mellers is now 2 form entry, currently with 463 pupils, and we have full-time places for 3-year-olds. If you look at our school website, Mrs. Lyons already talked about this, one of the first things you'll see is the way we describe ourselves. Mellers is an extraordinary, unique school, an oasis at the heart of the community, and that's Ofsted speak, not us. We want our pupils to leave Mellers and be well equipped for secondary school, for college, for the top universities and for the world of work. We want our pupils to be fulfilled, hopeful and brimming with aspiration. Our guest speaker, and we're all hugely excited, and I just need to double check, Miss Kervick, is our great, good stuff. We're nearly there, we're nearly at the zenith. We're so excited that he's been able to join us today, even though it is online, and we are going to try and persuade him to join us in person at some point. We know that he shares our commitment to breaking the glass ceilings that we know society can put into place for communities like ours. Over the half-term holiday, and bear with me now, I'm not just about to show off about my half-term holiday, which was really nice. Bear with me, there's a point to it. I travelled to Andalusia with my daughter, and we visited Seville, Cordoba and Granada. the main centres of the Islamic caliphates in the Iberian Peninsula, 711 to 1492. If you have a look at our timeline, you might be able to find that. We visited the Alhambra Palace, the Mezquita of Cordoba, the palaces and mosques of the Muslim rulers. It was a time of huge prosperity for the Iberian Peninsula. Cordoba was the biggest city of Europe with a population of 1 million. Doesn't have that many people there now. It was also the centre of science, philosophy, medicine and learning under Muslim rule. Scholars came from all over Europe to learn there. And I would love to talk about my holiday in Andalusia all afternoon. There is a point to this. Our Spanish guide in Granada told us that Spanish schools, he learned in school, that the fall of the Islamic Caliphate in Granada in 1492 was about good versus evil and Christian versus Muslim. And it wasn't till he went to study history at university and studied that period at greater depth at university that he understood it was nothing to do with that. It was much more to do with power, greed and control than it was to do with religion. So in the same way, we want to teach our pupils at Mellers to ask searching questions. We want them to adopt a critical view of information. We want them to scratch beneath the surface. And when we study the golden age of Islam, for instance, we encourage heated debate and independent thinking. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, someone who personifies all of those qualities and whose work has guided our history curriculum and our wonderful timeline, which I'm sure you'll agree, I think this is the sort of thing, and where's Miroslav, who, there he is at the back, our wonderful photographer who worked with me to design this amazingly stupendous timeline, but it was inspired by David's work. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker, someone who personifies all the qualities that I've just outlined. And your work, and we spoke about this when we met on our Zoom call, that your work has guided our history curriculum, but also our wonderful timeline. And we're really hoping that if you come to visit us in person, you'll get an opportunity to see that in real time. So David, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. This is such an important moment for us. I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Ms. Dawson, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you all of you for letting me come and talk to you today. And I'm so flattered that you've been using my work and that you've produced a wall chart, and that you've been, it sounds like, having a very busy Black History Month, doing lots of different things and learning about people from the past who were of African heritage. I know from talking to Mrs. Dawson and from listening to you today that you're a school with a mission. You're a school unlike others. You're dedicated as an organization to the idea that you can be more than your society tells you. That where you are, where you start in life, doesn't shape where you end up, that life is a journey, and that you can make choices, but you need help to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about myself, about why I became an historian, about my family and how I came to be in this country. And then we've got time for lots of questions. And some of you I know sent me questions that I've already seen this morning. So I want to tell you a little bit about me. So I was born in Africa, in Lagos, which is the capital, well, it was the capital city when I was born, of Nigeria. And when I was very young, my parents separated and I came to live in the north of England, in the northeast, which is another area like Nottingham because it's full of coal mines. And some of my ancestors had worked in those coal mines. And that's where I grew up. I went to school by the banks of a river called the Tyne. And it was a very, very different country in the 1970s. It was very unlike the Britain that we live in today. So when I was at school, there was no Black History Month, and there were no books about Black history. We didn't learn about any of the people that I'm sure you've been learning about Mary Seacole or Uludo Equiano or Ignatius Sancho. None of those people were known, were taught in schools. Only a few historians had ever done any work to look into their lives. So there was no Black history when I was growing up. And there was no history about the stories of migration and movement that explained why my family looked the way it does and why we were half African and how we'd come to be in Britain. So all of that history that's now celebrated every October in Black History Month, all of it was missing when I was growing up. And because it was growing up, I didn't really understand the connections, the stories that had led me to be in Britain. And the people around me, not just the other children, but the teachers, they didn't understand the history that explained why people like me with brown skin who'd come from other parts of the world were in Britain. And so my school and my town were not very nice places in the 70s. There was lots of racism. It was quite a difficult place to be. And my family had a really, really difficult time. But I wanted to understand the history that led to my birth, how my father, who was from Nigeria, why he'd come to Britain to become a student, what the connections were between Nigeria and Britain. And history's full of answers. History explains the journeys that our families and our countries have been on. So I became an historian, and I studied really, really hard and started to make history programs on television and to write history books. And when I was at university, most of the people who were studying history came from really rich families. And they were people for whom the idea of studying history and going to university had always been normal. They never thought that maybe they couldn't go to university or they wouldn't have the money to go to university. And very few people who were interested in history and who were studying at university had backgrounds like mine, that hadn't lived in council houses, they hadn't been migrants, they hadn't experienced racism. So it was a very, very different world that most of the people that I was studying history came from. And so they weren't interested, and most people studying history weren't interested in the stories that I've spent my life talking about, the stories of Black people who came to Britain in the 18th century, or people who were enslaved, who lived as slaves on plantations on British islands like Jamaica or Barbados. And they weren't interested in the stories of the empire. They weren't interested in how Britain became this kind of global country with all of these connections. And that's because history had ignored these stories for a long time. So when you have Black History Month, and when you look at books like the ones I write and the other people write, those books just didn't exist 30, 40 years ago. So when your school was first built back in 1971, there was no Black History Month. And all of the books that you can read now and you can get hold of about Black British history, none of those books had been written. It wasn't until 1987, so 16 years after your school had been opened, that the first big book on Black British history was published. So you are having an education that I didn't have. You're able to encounter and to meet and to read about people from the past who came from Africa or America or the Caribbean or other parts of the world in a way that I couldn't, because those histories just weren't available. Those books hadn't been written, and Britain was a very, very different country. So we've had a lot of change. We've created new forms of history, and we've created new celebrations like Black British History Month over the past 30, 40 years. So the education that you're able to get and the people that you're able to learn about, that's very, very different, and it's quite new. And that's the exciting thing about Black history, is it's growing. We're meeting new people all the time. We're discovering people from the past that we just didn't know about 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'm sure that you've learned this Black History Month about Mary Seacole, who went to the Crimean War, who came from Jamaica, who set up thing that she called her hotel in the Crimean War, and she cared for injured soldiers, and she sold them things, luxuries, to try to make things more pleasant when they were in that war. Well, just 30 years ago, no one had heard of Mary Seacole. And now that picture that you've probably seen of her, just 16 years ago, that picture was lost. Nobody knew who it was. It was just a picture of this old black woman, and no one could recognize that it was Mary Seacole. And the book that she wrote about her own life, her memoir, that as well was lost. No one understood its importance. Her grave, where she's buried in a cemetery in London, that was overgrown, and it was broken, and it was damaged, and it was neglected. And it was only repaired when a group of nurses from Jamaica, who were learning to be nurses in England, decided to try to campaign for it to be saved. So, but today, you know, Mary's somebody you can learn about at school. She's somebody that might be on your timeline. She's somebody whose house in London's got a big blue plaque on it to remind people that this is where she lived, and her grave has been repaired and cleaned and polished. And she's part of what we think about when we think about Black British history. So all of this is quite new. And what it does, and what the importance of it, is that it means that you don't have to believe something which I believed when I was young, because there was no Black people in the history that I learned. I thought Black people hadn't done anything important, that they hadn't been at important moments in the past, and that history was just about people who had white skin. And I think it's damaging to believe that, and to not know that that's not true, because these histories are the people you've been learning about in Black History Month. These are shared histories. They belong to everybody. And to have those histories and those people missing from what's taught at school, I think it's really bad for everybody. It's bad for people who are from Africa or the Caribbean, but it's bad for everybody, because these are our shared stories. The other problem that I had at school when I was trying to learn history is that I'm dyslexic. So I have problems writing. I still can't write very well. I have to use a computer because my writing is really, really rubbish. And I had lots of trouble reading. My auntie had to teach me how to read. She was a headmistress at a school in London, and her mother had to teach me to read because my school wasn't able to do that. And that was really difficult as well. So I wanted to learn about history, but my reading wasn't good enough and my writing wasn't good enough. And I had to fight really hard with the help of my mum and my auntie, and later one teacher who helped me to become better at those sorts of things. So when I got to university, I was somebody who wanted to study a part of history that no one else was interested in. I was from a family and a place where people normally didn't study history. I went to a school where most people didn't go to university. Very few people from my school went to university. And I had a learning difficulty that I had to overcome. So it was unlikely back then that somebody like me would get to study history. And so the books that I've written and the work that I've done, that's all about being somebody who comes from a background, who have experiences that are not like most of the people who make history. And what I didn't realize when I started writing books was that because most people who make history don't look like me and don't have families like mine, and they aren't immigrants who've come from other countries, what I didn't realize was that that would mean that when people looked at me, they saw somebody who was really interesting to them, because somebody who showed that it's possible to be an historian, it's possible to make television programs, even if you don't look like most of the people on television or most people who are historians. And so I'm somebody who in my school, there was nobody who was a teacher who wasn't white. When I was at university, there was nobody who wasn't white and middle class who was a teacher. And so I've learned that the work that I do, and trying to be me and to try to talk about these things and talk about myself and my family and my experiences, that these are things that other people, to my surprise, are really interested in, and that these are things that help show that with help, especially help at school and help from our families, we can sometimes, not always, but we can sometimes open doors and do things that people around us, society around us, suggest that maybe we can't do.
David, I'd really like to thank you so much for coming along. I think this is a really special thing for us as a school, to have somebody who's so important in terms of being in the public eye, but also representing what we are as a school. You represent everything that we stand for, and so I'm so grateful to you for agreeing to be part of today. I'd also like to thank everybody, all our dignitaries that have come along. Dignitaries, it sounds nice, doesn't it? But a huge thank you to you all for coming along and supporting the work that we do at Mellers. I also want to thank Mrs Travis, who's been working so hard to get all of the catering ready. She sorted the staff room out, ordered balloons. Mrs Travis, behind the scenes, has worked incredibly hard. I'd also like to thank Mr Ward, whose arms are probably really aching by now because he's doing this little bit. I'd also like to thank Miss Ginnard and Miss Jones for doing such a wonderful job of preparing our choir. Best choir we've ever had by a long shot, I think. I'd also like to thank the wonderful people that have come along to sign for us so that our deaf children are able to fully participate. Thank you so much. Mrs Buttress, Miss Dermody, running around like one-o, getting things sorted out. Mrs Patel, really huge thank you to you, because you've actually put all of this together. I've had quite a lot going on for me personally, and so Mrs Patel said that she would step in and take control, and she's organised absolutely everything. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. And then finally, thank you, David, for taking the time out of what must be an incredibly busy schedule to invest in our school, Mellers Primary School in Radford in Nottingham. It means so much. Thank you. So we're going to move on, but you stay where you are, and then so we're going to close this bit, I think. Children, stay where you are. We've got the questions for David coming up. I think we're going to have a bit of shuffling. Do you need the toilet? So, okay, we're all good. We're all good. So I think we're going to have a bit of shuffling around here. But dignitaries, you're about to move to the library because we're going to have our official opening of the library.
I think it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago, isn't it? Amanda asked me if I would do my governor bit and come in and interview some children. And we were particularly focused, as we always are, on the children who had the potential to do really, really well. And because we were very aware that our data showed us that those children could lag behind. So I had a group of year 5s and year 6s, and I spent a whole morning with each group and asking them some really deep and searching questions about their learning, what would make learning better, what could be improved for them, and just talk in general about school. And I learned a phenomenal amount during that interview. But one of the things we talked about and focused on was the importance of reading and books. And those of you that are involved with Mellers know, reading is absolutely key to learning for us. And one of the things that they really regretted about their school was that we didn't have a library. There had been a focus on reading, but because of the space that we had classroom libraries, which were great, and the children took advantage of those. But they felt that they wanted a space where they could come together and read and enjoy books and be comfortable, and just take the pleasure from reading. And I took that back to Amanda, and as I said in there, Mellers is an incredibly creative place. It's a proactive place, and the first thing that Amanda said to me was, yes, of course, we've got to do something about this. But you'll notice that I said it was 4 years ago, because it's taken us that long to actually achieve what we've achieved here. Partly because of the funding for it, because as you all know, creating beautiful spaces costs money, and buying more books costs money. And the other challenge that we had was finding the actual space in which to do it. And it was sort of, it evolved from looking at the space for the focused deaf provision to come to Mellers as well, didn't it? Because we spent a lot of time wandering around thinking about where that provision was going to be based. And Amanda and I stood in here about 4:30 one evening, and we said, well, this is just the most ideal space for a library. It was, I mean, it had the computer suite, but it was dull, I suppose, is the way you could describe it. But this is the exact space for a library, and this is where we can do it. We were fortunate that we had some funding available, and we were also fortunate that I had a connection with Alex over there, and she'll be embarrassed that I'm going to mention her, but Alex used to actually work for me in a past life, and she was our learning resources manager. And so Alex came along and we started to look at this space and to see what could be created here. And Paula and Hayley, who run the area, spent time talking to children and teachers about what they would like it to be. So over the summer, this is the space that we have created, and I'm going to hand over to Hayley now because she's going to tell you what the impact has been. It's in its infancy. It opened in September. It's in its infancy, but Hayley will tell you a little bit more about the actual impact it's had on for the staff and children. Hayley.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Leslie. Unfortunately, Paula can't be with us today, and Paula is my colleague, and we work together really closely, and we work really closely with Alex to create the library space, and with the generous funding from the governors and the go-ahead. And it's come from the children, and so you won't be surprised that the response from the children and staff has just been overwhelmingly, amazingly fantastic. Everybody has come down and loved the space. Everybody has come down and used the space. I can't go a day without having to send children back up to class because actually now it's time for you to be in class and you need to leave the library space for a minute, but we'll see you later.
It's the same with teachers, isn't it? Because teachers are using the table here for planning, and we've had to put some electric sockets in and get the electrician in so people could hook the laptops up.
This is it, because it's such a used space, and it wasn't. So I've worked down in Key Stage 1 for a few years now, and this really was a disused space. It was a bit dilapidated and a bit unloved, and with Alex's vision, we worked really hard to create somewhere, and one of the children told me that this is the space that we deserve. And I thought that was really powerful, because that's what we think as well. This is what our community deserves, a place to come and enjoy, because we know how powerful reading is. From 1971, when the school was open, I've been listening to Laura giving me some history lessons. We've had countless authors, poets, publishers come and visit us at school. I've worked here since 2004, and there was an old library space here, but it was unloved, it was disused and out of date, and it wasn't what we needed. So we've worked really hard to create this. Haneen and Jaffa have come to help me out, because they have been trained up as some of our reading monitors. How many reading monitors do you think we've got, our library monitors?
I think 2 in every class, so 4 in year 6 and like in every other class.
There's a lot of you, isn't there? And they work so hard every day. They come down at break time or at lunchtime, and they work with me and Mrs. Newbold to keep the library in good order, to make sure children are checking out books correctly, to help children recommend other books to read or find the literature that they want. So Haneen and Jaffa are like our right hand people, aren't you? What do you think to the library space now we have it, Haneen?
It's like a really fun place. People like to come here and relax and read their books. Maybe they like take a book and they read it and they put it back if they don't like it, or they will like take their books from home and they'll read it.
And that's okay, isn't it?
Simple, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Jaffa, what do you think to having the library now?
So what I think is like people now like this library better than our like last one, because there's more like books that like we can use. Like we have some like maths books, we've got poetry books, and we've got like cushions and chairs where like people can now sit on instead of like going on the floor, because because it's easier to like read because you're not distracted on like the floor problem.
No.
You're on like
It's cosy, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a cosy space to be. And we, like it's been said before in this afternoon, it's all about breaking those glass ceilings. We know from our research when children love reading that not only is it good for their mental health and well-being, it's got the biggest factor in socio-economic mobility. And so for us, this has been a really, really big deal. So thank you so much, and thank you, Leslie. Thank you for allowing us the chance to do it.
And
Scissors.
we've got some scissors.
And they're not just the regular school scissors either. I found some big ones.
Yes, and I'm going
Before
to...
we do it, I just want to say, can I just nip in with a bit of a thank you for somebody? Mrs. Patel. I want Mrs. Patel to come here because you've done so much, you've invested so much time and energy in making this day such a success and been really committed to it. But I just want to say thank you. You've gone above and beyond, you really have. So, Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you. Because we'd say Mellers is a team, and all I've really done is bark orders at people and invite people to come in and talk. So, but I have had the best summer reading logbooks, and there's a lot of things I haven't said. But maybe if you want to come to the staff reunion off the record, we can let you know some more stories. But thank you so much. I do appreciate it, and your support is wonderful. Thank you. Right, Jasbinder, over to you.
So I'm going to invite Jasbinder now, who is our reading patron, former pupil, poet, to actually come and officially cut the ribbon on Mellers School Library.
Wow. Well, this is just such a huge, huge honour to be here and to be opening the first sort of proper library. It's amazing. Shall I cut the ribbon and then say
Indeed,
something?
yes.
Yeah. So you're going to count with me, guys? 1,
1, 2, 3.
Woo!
Woo!
So just a couple of words. So it's a huge, huge honour. I'm the author of 3 books, and my first book, Asher and the Spirit Bird, was published in 2017, and it went on to win the Costa Book Award, which was just incredible. But part of what I wanted to say is that when I was a pupil at Mellers, and I'm a big family. There are 6 of us, and 5 of us came to Mellers. So I was just talking to Mr. Dunbar there. I don't know if he popped. Oh, it's over there. You know, we were kind of like a big force in the school. So there was a villain in each of the school years, more or less. And I think everything that everybody said today, it sort of resonates so much with me. It is a really, really special place, and I think what makes it special is the teachers and the faith that they have in their pupils. And as a little girl, the thing that I would have loved would have been a library like this to just kind of come and lose myself in. I grew up in a house that was full of stories, but not necessarily full of books. And so it was so important for me and my family to come to a school like Mellers, and to be able to find the thing that you were really good at, and to have that nurtured. And when I read the poem that I wrote for today in the hall, it was so key, that just the fact that Mrs. Wallace, you know, she really she knew that I enjoyed writing, and if it had been up to me, I would have been writing just, you know, all day. And she took this poem and you know, I remember it really clearly. It was in that classroom, and she got some bubbles and blew them, and they were sort of going everywhere, and she said, kind of write the poem about the bubbles. And I was using all these like big fancy words like ascending and descending, and you know, I can't kind of remember any more about the poem, but it had a really big impact on me. And I would say that you know, the start that I got here with not just, you know, I remember, Ruben, you know, you were talking about swimming, and, you know, I remember those swimming lessons that we had. It wasn't at John Carroll, but, you know, it's the whole kind of picture, the holistic picture of how you're going to get from, you know, being a child being brought up in a community like Radford, you know, which isn't always kind of regarded brilliantly or whatever, you know, to have this access has been key to me. And, you know, although I loved writing, I didn't get to do it in a published form for a long, long time. You know, I became a teacher rather than a writer, but I always continued to write, and you know, so it was a huge thing for me when I had this book published. And I would say being patron of reading is a really important role for me. I love coming and seeing the pupils, and you know, and just to sort of know that they're all individuals with their strengths and the passions, things that they really want to do. And it was wonderful to see you playing your trombone, and just, you know, it's just marvellous, and I think everything is going from strength to strength. So well done, everybody. Team Mellers, go.